Okay. All right, it is 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. You may notice we have a few members of council that are missing in person here. Not a missing person, but missing in person at the council chambers. So Councillor Reid is away tonight. Councillor Fedeko and Councillor McFadden are joining us over the phone. Can you guys hear us okay?
Sure can. Yeah, I can.
Okay. So please bear with us. We'll have to speak into our microphones, enunciate, throw our voices, and be clear. So I would imagine as we navigate through these interesting times, they continue to become even more interesting, and we'll just roll with the punches as we have throughout the last 6 months and carry on. So that's a wrap on calling to order. Adoption of the agenda. I'd just like to note that we are going to be talking about public hearing process at 6A. If we could move that ahead of bylaws so that when we set a public hearing, we know what kind of public hearing we're setting. So if we could amend the agenda to have 6A come before bylaws. Anyone else need to add or like to make a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Nagel?
The agenda as amended.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All right. That works perfectly. Thanks, guys. Okay, we'll move into the adoption of our previous minutes. Anybody have an opportunity to read? Councillor Flowers? Okay, Councillor Flowers is moving. No discussion. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, carried. Now we'll move into 6A, public hearing process. Ms. Knight. And as we continue to navigate, as I said, these interesting times, we need to talk about how we're going to have public hearings.
We do. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Back in March, on the 27th, the provincial government released meeting procedures for COVID suppression regulation to assist municipalities in continuing to conduct council meetings and public hearings in compliance with the Act in a manner that avoids potentially exposing persons to COVID-19. So during the time where we were all working remotely, all of our council meetings and public hearings were being held remotely. We had revised our internal process a bit for the town of Cochrane to allow for an extended period of time for public to provide feedback and input during the public hearing process, where we would adjourn the hearing, do our complete regular council meeting, and then reconvene the public hearing, giving an additional time for public to provide input. So since we have come back into chambers and are holding meetings publicly, there has been some discussion internally with administration into how best proceed with our public hearings going forward from now until possibly the beginning of February, which is when our mask mandate bylaw also expires. So how we are going through that process. So administration is actually recommending that we move public hearings out of council chambers because there is limited ability to have the physical distancing required to protect residents in council and administration for public hearings that may draw a significant amount of residents. And that would allow residents to continue to come here and provide their input to council on important matters that have public hearings being held on them, but still allow that distancing to protect those folks. What that does limit, though, is the ability to stream these public hearings, because our streaming capacity is built directly into council chambers. And so to move the public hearing out of council chambers would eliminate streaming altogether. The other option that we are providing for you this evening would be that we go completely virtual for the public hearings, so that council, administration, and the public are able to participate virtually through a Zoom or a Teams session. We would have to have some regulators, moderators in place to make sure that all of the public who wanted to participate in all of our hearings would have that ability. But it is the second option that would ensure that we are getting all of the public feedback that council wants, that we are required to have within the Act, and still make sure we're in compliance with that Act. And so both of these options are in your council report this evening. Both of them also expire on February 1st. We tied it to the mask bylaw mandate, because as we are reconsidering things as we move through this process, this COVID world, that would allow us to relook at this at that time. Of course, council always has the option to relook at and provide direction to administration at any time as we move forward. But what we're trying to do with this report this evening is to provide that consistency for all public hearings, regardless of the topic, regardless of whether we have 5 people or we have 300 people, that we would consistently hold public hearings in the same manner from now until the 1st of February, where we would relook at this and either extend it or bring it to a close. And so given this public hearing process is council's process, we felt it best to bring this forward to council for consideration this evening to be able to provide us direction on how you'd like us to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Flowers?
I'm just wondering if you considered doing the Facebook Live along with the
Your mic went off, Councillor Flowers.
Just hold on, we'll get you. Just need. There we go.
Okay. I was just curious if you thought about doing the Facebook Live along with the bigger room. Then you can have both options open, because some people still may not feel safe to come to the bigger room, and others might not have the equipment at home to. So if you could do both.
The only thing that hadn't brought that into this report that I brought forward this evening is the cost of the additional resources that are required to do that filming. That's not done by our in-house teams, and so we have to hire additional resources to do the Facebook Live videos. And so we were looking for that consistency of either holding them virtually so that we have the streaming still the way we had streaming during all of the council meetings when we were not in chambers, or holding them in a separate room, which we've done previously here for larger public hearing events where we know we're going to have a significant turnout. We've moved them to another location within the ranch house, but I believe that was prior to starting streaming here at the town.
Do you know what the cost would be to hire someone to look after the
Unfortunately, I don't have that number in front of me, Councillor Flowers.
My preference.
We
would
could
be
look
to
into
do
that
both.
for sure.
Okay, good discussion. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Thanks for bringing this forward, Ms. Knight. I actually have a third thought, I guess option 3 thought. Is there a way, or are there reasons that I'm not coming up with why we can't remain in chambers and bring public hearing speakers through the room when it's time to speak, and then back outside when we reach a room capacity, allowing us to still have in-person public hearings but allow it to be streamed, which is my main goal?
Through the chair to Councillor Wilson, there is to some degree. So when we have full capacity here in chambers, we do have the technology that streams out all of the audio into the foyer here just behind us, behind the glass. So where we've had larger public hearings, that was feasible, and we can accommodate some more people that way. But where we might have a much larger public hearing where we would potentially be housing speakers in the Hall of Vision, the 20 to 30 second delay that we have with the YouTube streaming can be significant for some folks. So as we're trying to move people through, they may not have heard all of the last speaker. There is some hiccups with that. We certainly could attempt to do that, and depending on the size of the public hearing, it may not be an issue at all. But where we might have some more significant ones coming forward, we may have a significant turnout, and then that becomes more troublesome and a higher risk for not only council and administration, but all of the residents who are coming forward to speak. But we could look at staging solutions and things of that nature as well, for sure.
Thank you. And then possibly differentiating between size of a public hearing, I suppose. If we were worried about a 30-person turnout versus a 300, it's a big difference, obviously. But my main goal, at least here, would be to have them streamed as my main goal. So going into a different conference room where it's not online, I feel like it's a step backwards. I'm proud of us going online this council term, and we didn't see any of this coming, but it certainly, the timing was perfect, because I don't think going back is a smart strategy. So I'd like to make sure whatever we do, we stream it. I guess my second best would be, like we talked about, live online rather than going to a separate room.
Okay.
But if we can accommodate my third option, that would be my preference, I think.
Well, and that's what we're doing here tonight, is discussing that and deciding on a path forward so that we're all comfortable with that. And that's why administration's bringing
Administration's goal
forward.
is that consistency for residents, so that they understand how we're moving forward. If it's going to be staging and COVID questionnaires at the door for people coming to attend a public hearing, then we can certainly do that, and we would work with our communications team to provide that communication out to the residents, so they're aware that there will be that process as they're coming to come to a public hearing.
Yeah, carry on.
One more thought that just generated, if there's somebody that's unable to make it to a public hearing, and that becomes more and more likely these days, is there any way to have the person that wants to present at the public hearing be virtual in chambers? Can that happen? That's another twist that was on my mind with this.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Wilson, there is still that option. We still do have the option for people to submit their requests in writing or their submissions in writing, and we may want to continue to hold the ability to submit all the way to the end of a public hearing, so that council has all of the information, because people do have thoughts during a public hearing that they might want to share. Previously, submissions cut off when the public hearing opened. So during COVID times, we have extended them, and that extension may continue should council wish, just so that we are ensuring that everyone who wants to have input provided to council before decisions are made can do that through all the means that they have.
Great, thank you very much. I definitely see the merits of staying in chambers and remaining streaming if we can accomplish both those things. So I'd like to see what everybody else has to say.
Okay. Councillor Fedeko or McFadden, do you have anything to say?
Can I make a comment?
Okay, go ahead.
I was curious, just as Councillor Flowers was, about the Facebook Live, and I know that obviously doesn't hit all demographics of society, but when it comes to a cost attached to it, it could be as easy as getting a tripod and an iPad and hitting record. It doesn't have to be, it wouldn't be edited or anything like that. You could shut off commenting so that people would know that they can't necessarily comment on the post, unless you wanted to monitor it for comments. But I guess it would depend on which way you're looking at it. But I'm not seeing a huge cost to it, unless it's the fact that you need somebody to moderate it, which then would require somebody obviously to moderate that conversation. But that would just be my question, is whether or not we couldn't go that way if we needed to. But I certainly understand the dilemma that COVID has brought to all of us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. In the balance of, in this COVID world, trying to balance off, the efficiency, the nature engagement, and the cost, I'm actually in favor of what was recommended, is that we try to move the public hearing to a different room, so continue that work, and to make sure that, that engagement does happen in some form. And then, as we get into February, we'll be able to see what our reality looks like, and maybe we can adapt. But I'm just trying to balance off, how we govern the efficiency of that, the cost of that, and what we really need to happen. I'm actually quite comfortable with the first option.
All right, thank you. Councillor Nagel, do you have anything to add? No? No? Okay. I'm kind of split on this one. I spoke with a few other elected officials in other communities that have been grappling with this, and one community in particular had a larger public hearing that they needed to have, and I believe it was 70 or so residents that lined up, and they did theirs entirely on Zoom, virtual. And at first I kind of pushed back on that, thinking like I would prefer to have things in person. But then thinking about all of the barriers and then having this accessible to as many people as possible, and I like where you're going, Councillor Wilson, that we just need to, remain constant in something, and that's been the virtual world. So I'm kind of in the middle on this. I'd like to find a way that we can have as many people attend as possible, but I also see the need to have this consistency where we're not changing all the time depending on how many people show up 5 minutes before a meeting. It would be hard on staff, it would be hard to plan for, it would be difficult. So I think we need to pick something and then stick with it. What that is, I'm kind of stuck in the middle right now. But is there anyone have anything against the entire virtual world? And what I think that would mean is that we generally have a public hearing prior to a council meeting. We would likely be all in separate rooms on our laptops or whatever, do a public hearing, and then move into this room publicly for a meeting, or have a public hearing on a completely separate night altogether.
Correct.
So I just throw that out. No one really spoke about that in your comments. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, thank you. I would go with the second option then. I would move the second one. As long as we're keeping it online, I'm comfortable, and that would be having a public meeting in separate spaces individually if we need to on Zoom at the start before our council meeting, and then coming in here for the actual council meeting. My fear is getting away from live streaming and not being consistent, like you're saying, Mr. Mayor, and not allowing public to view what's happening at home, which becomes, it's even more important than ever right now with social distancing and what's going on. So option 2 would definitely be my recommendation, and if I could move it, I would move that then.
Okay. Councillor Flowers?
I would still prefer to see 2 options, because I think there's some people that don't have the equipment to use Zoom and haven't used it throughout, but they will be interested in some of these hearings that are coming up. So I'd really like to see a second way to get
Just
there.
for clarity, Councillor Flowers, our 2 councillors that are on the line tonight are on a Zoom call. So there is always the ability to just phone in to a Zoom. You don't actually have to have computer cameras and things like that. A telephone is actually all you need to participate in that type of Zoom public hearing. And so they do have that flexibility within Zoom to just allow calling.
Councillor Fedeko or McFadden, do you have anything further to add?
I would support what has been brought forward. I do agree it's more important than ever that we make sure that this is an option available to the community, and if that means that, again, that we have people call in through Zoom. I do like the option of having it on a second night. I just think that or a different night, it just makes that process easier. And just like we've done in the past, right? Taking information, there's no discussion, there's no debate. It's just hearing what everybody says, and then we'll bring it back at another meeting. But I think that's going to be our best alternative. But I do have to agree, having the public be able to weigh in, not necessarily in person, is important right now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McFadden, anything further?
No, that makes sense to me. And like it was mentioned, the Zoom does have the capacity, as Councillor Fedeko and I are using, to just use our phones to call in and participate. So, that seems like a reasonable way to move ahead.
Okay, so for clarity, Ms. Knight, if we choose option 2, would you bring back an option for us with costs before we proceed, or would you just proceed with the...
If you bring back option 2, we're just going virtually and there is no additional cost to that. We already have Zoom accounts that we've been using. The streaming will go the same way that we're doing now, so there will be some administration in council chambers to facilitate that. We would just have to coordinate where council would be located, and if that public hearing is going to be held on the same night that we hold our regular council meeting, or if council would direct us to start holding public hearings on a different evening.
Okay. So, Councillor Wilson, I heard a motion there to move option 2. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'd vote to move option 2, and then with the variable of whether it's the same evening or a different one, I would be open to either. I'm flexible there, and more just on the volume before us for the meeting. If it made more sense to have it on a different day, if we had too much in front of us, that's fine, or same day likely works too. I have no opinion there, but option 2 was my favorite and what I would like to move.
Okay, and just for clarity, administration always weighs the agenda and the potential size of a public hearing, whether we put it on that date or not already, so.
Correct, and council has to set every public hearing date at first reading for every bylaw, so there'll be some consideration given to that when those bylaws come forward for council's consideration.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Anyone want to debate or discuss any further? I'm looking skyward and asking 2 online if we're good to go.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm in.
Okay. No further debate. I'll call the question. All those in favor of moving option 2 forward?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, that carries. Thank you, Ms. Knight. All right, cruising along to bylaws. We're at 5A. Bylaw 18-2020, Land Use Bylaw Amendment 0, Lot Line, Single Detached District, Direct Control and Redesignation. As well, Mr. Weldon.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Janung, members of council. Just give me 1 second here. I will bring up a very brief presentation.
As you can see, we are moving at a snail's pace to keep up with technology today. As I open my water bottle right in my microphone.
Great. Okay, good evening, Mayor Janung, members of council. I'd like to present to you Bylaw 18-2020, which proposes a direct control district to accommodate zero lot line development within Cochrane. So just a bit of an application overview, very high-level overview is this bylaw proposes the creation of a direct control district to redesignate parcels from R2 and R1 to this direct control district. This is to accommodate the development of zero lot line, single detached dwellings within Cochrane. If approved, the direct control district would allow for the opportunity of zero lot line homes. These are single detached dwellings. However, the current properties would still remain or maintain the existing development opportunities of the current R2 district and the R1 district for the portion of the, specifically for the R1 district for the portion of the block in the Sunset Ridge as indicated on a map, which I will show you here in a minute. Just a bit of an explanation of what zero lot line development is. It is single detached homes that are permitted to be constructed on one side property line while leaving the remaining 1.5 meters as a maintenance easement on the opposite side of the property. Currently, there is a 2.4 meter or 8 foot requirement between single family homes, and this would change it to 1.5 or 5 feet of space between the homes. The affected lands are specifically in the communities of Riversong as indicated in the map. The aerial photo just generally outlines where the location is, and the gray area on the right-hand side indicates exactly where the direct control district would be applied. So this is Riversong. This is in the community of Precedence. The next is in Sunset Ridge. This is the application to change R2, but there is a small portion, as you would notice on the right-hand side. The hatched area is a small portion of R1. Fireside. Similarly to the other maps, indicating where the specific blocks would be redesignated to the direct control district. And the other portions in the community of Heartland. The recommendation tonight is for option 1, which is that council give first reading to Bylaw 18-2020, and that council establishes a public hearing for Bylaw 18-2020 on Monday, November 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m. This will provide administration enough time to take the bylaw to the Cochrane Planning Commission for their comments and be able to present those comments to council on November 9th. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council, we're looking for first reading to put it in the public realm tonight. Set a public hearing. Anyone want to make a motion to that effect? Councillor Flowers?
I will move that council give first reading to Bylaw 18-2020.
Okay. Is there any questions at this point of what's being proposed?
Could I ask a quick question?
Yep, Councillor Fedeko, go ahead.
I just wanted Mr. Weldon maybe to answer, especially for the public at large, that these aren't new communities or anything like that that are being looked at, right? This is development that is, it was already kind of, it's on the books, it's on the plans. We're not bringing on a new community or anything along that line, right? Just so that people aren't coming down, obviously, on council to say that we're creating another community or adding more to a pile of development. This is stuff that was already pre-existing. It's just looking at that land. Is that correct?
Through the mayor to Councillor Federico, that is correct. This is land that has already been planned for. It does have a current land use district applied to them, but it is currently vacant.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Just a question for clarification, if I could, about the setback sizes. If I just heard Mr. Weldon, we're currently 2.4 meters. Is that on each side for one? And we're going down to 1.5 just on the one side with zero lot line, or I didn't understand the aggregate consequence of it?
Sure, yeah. I'll provide a bit of clarity through Mayor Janung to Councillor Wilson. The 2.4 meters or the 8 feet is across, that is from building to building across the property line. So currently we have a 1.2 meter setback requirement to the property line for single detached dwellings in our districts, R1 and R2 districts. So when you combine those two setbacks from building to building, it is 2.4 or 8 feet. For a zero lot line development, the building, the single detached dwelling, would be constructed on one side property with a 1.5 meter setback on the other side. So one side would be built to 0. The other side would be built to 1.5 meters. That next home would be built at 0 meters. So the separation would be 1.5 meters between the two homes.
So in essence, there would be 0.9 meters in aggregate being reduced from what we currently have in the R1?
That is correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. Thank
Sure.
you.
Yeah.
Any other questions before I call the question?
Sorry, I have a question for clarification.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, can you speak, sorry, one of the concerns is raised in moving to this type of option is how would you address increased fire concern or fire risk?
Sorry, I think I missed that question.
How are fire concerns being addressed?
Sure, through Councillor McFadden through Mayor Janung. So the fire risks are addressed through, well, there's a couple different aspects, but how the homes are constructed. This is the building code will cover how homes are constructed to meet the building code to deal with the fire risks. So that is separate from our land use bylaw amendment and covered through that act and through that code.
Okay, and that all of that will come out at the public hearing. We can ask all those questions. Obviously, it'd be circulated through all the departments, including the fire department.
That is correct. Yeah, at the public hearing, we will be providing a fulsome presentation about the bylaw, as well as the comments that we have received, and a little bit more detail into exactly what the bylaw is proposing. Yeah.
Okay. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I think it'll suffice for now, and I look forward to the public hearing and the second reading. So we're good for now. Thank you.
Okay. Don't see any further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor of first reading? Those opposed?
Aye.
Sorry? Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So I have 5 in favor, 1 opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should be a 4-2, so 5-1. Is there the 2 online, are you both in favor?
I'm in favor. I'm in favor.
Okay. All right. That's a 5-1, 1 opposed. Okay, carries. And a motion for a public hearing. Okay, Councillor Flowers, you want to carry on?
Okay, I move that council establish a public hearing for Bylaw 18, 2020 on November 9th, 2020 at 6 p.m.
Okay, and I would just ask the question of administration that we are okay to do a Zoom call that night, and I understand we have a council meeting that night as well? Okay, so that'll be a hybrid Zoom call, room change, council meeting night. Okay. Brave new world. All those in favor of the public hearing for November 9th?
Aye. Aye.
Carries. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Weldon.
Thank you.
6B, wastewater section update. Oh, sorry, 5B, I missed one. So much scratching on my agenda. Sorry, Troy. 5B first. My apologies. Bylaw 21, 2020. Evening, Ms. Drucker.
Good evening. Just going to get myself organized.
Another first reading.
That's correct. Good evening, Mayor Tenung, members of council, and senior administration. I'm here tonight to present a brand new bylaw. It's one made possible by changes to the Municipal Government Act. Those changes give municipalities more flexibility in how we notify the community about bylaws, resolutions, meetings, public hearings, and more. We are required to have an approved bylaw in place to have that flexibility. In print historically meant newspaper advertising, but it also included mail or other types of delivery to every resident in an area impacted by a proposed change. In 2017, revision to the MGA section was deliberately written to be flexible and to allow for current and future changes in technology. This allows municipalities to adapt to meet local needs. It allows the town to develop a made-in-Cochrane solution for advertising. Bylaw 21, 2020 has been drafted to give the town flexibility in all public notifications. With an approved bylaw, administration will develop a consistent workflow and process to continue to reach as many residents as possible with public notifications using both the newspaper and online media. The MGA has specific requirements for a bylaw that authorizes alternative advertising methods. Council must be satisfied that the method provided for in the bylaw is likely to bring the matter to the attention of substantially all residents in the relevant area. A public hearing must be held. Notice of the bylaw must be advertised by newspaper, residential mail, or website, and bylaws passed under this section must be made available for public inspection. The bylaw before you tonight allows for more variety in advertising and the use of more media. The proposed bylaw is the result of discussions and consultation between communications, legislative services, and development services. With the approval of this bylaw, we'll put a consistent process in place so notices are advertised consistently and notifications are consistent and timely. So I have some examples for you. This is what a public hearing notice currently looks like in the newspaper as part of municipal matters. This is how municipal matters and notices are currently published on the website. There are other land use changes that use other methods of public notification. This is a sample of a notification sign that's installed temporarily when a change is proposed to a property. It is displayed for varying periods of time, depending on the type of change, whether it's a development permit application, subdivision application, or land use redesignation application. Town planning staff work with GIS staff to post all development permits in an online map. The postings also include additional information the public might want for their own information or if they wish to pursue an appeal. This is in addition to mailed notifications to adjacent property owners. The radius for those notifications depends on the type of land use or change. Those details are outlined in our land use bylaw. It might be helpful for council to know what the data show about current media activity and audiences. Between the 2014 and 2019 community surveys, the number of residents who say they read the local newspaper is down 15%. In that same period, the number for social media went up 11%, and website numbers went down for some reason. We have even more recent data about where Cochranites get specific information. The Social Recovery Task Force survey in June of this year gathered feedback online and in print. The full survey was printed in the Cochrane Eagle. They received a total of 517 responses online and 35 on paper, and almost all respondents said they have access to technology. In terms of our current advertising activity, we currently publish at least one page of municipal matters each week. Not every week has a public hearing or bylaw ad, but there is almost always notification of development permit approvals. As I said before, we'll continue to use the newspaper, but perhaps with reduced details and repetition. Currently, the information for public notices flows from the originating department or section to Legislative Services and Communications, and then back for final proof and approval. No change to the internal process or timing is anticipated, since notices will still be laid out in a clear, attractive, and easy-to-read manner, regardless of the medium or media we use to share with the community. Administration is recommending giving Bylaw 21-2020 first reading and setting a public hearing for October 26th. And that public hearing will be advertised in the current way on October 15th and 22nd. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. Council, any questions or moving of first readings? Councillor Nagel?
I have no questions. I think this is a good initiative. I'll move the recommended action.
Okay, and that is to give first reading and establish a public hearing for October 26th. Okay. Any questions for those of you following at home?
I have one quick question.
Go ahead, Councillor Federico.
Obviously, this doesn't change the period of notification that needs to go out, because I know obviously when things are in the paper, there needs to be a leadway of public hearings and all that. None of this changes those dates or those time periods.
So the question is, do we still have to follow the same time frame? So 2 weeks or whatever it is that we're legislated to advertise?
Yes, I believe so. Correct?
The timeframe the trigger date would change based on where the ad was being placed. So if the website, ad was placed on the website, that would be considered the first day. So the 21-day appeal period would start from the date that advertisement appeared on our website, as opposed to the first date it appeared in the paper. But the timeline is the same.
Yeah. So Councillor Federico, I'm hearing that the time frame stays the same, but the ability for the town to post something might be quicker or sooner, so that the 21 days passes quicker or sooner. Is that satisfactory?
Perfect. I guess I would just ask that be communicated out obviously ahead of time, just so that there's no confusion that those dates might be different, so that it's not called out, in a future decision or something, that somebody says, well, you weren't in the paper for the 21 days, just so that they are aware that there could be a difference in the timing, just so that we obviously cover our rear ends a little bit, so that there's no question.
Okay, that's something we can bring up during the public hearing and debate for second reading as well. Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor of first reading and setting the public hearing?
Aye.
I heard two. That carries. Thank you. Now we can move to the much anticipated 6B. water or wastewater section update. Thank you, Ms. Drucker. Good evening, Mr. Sylvester.
Good evening, Mayor Janung and members of council. I'll just try to bring up my presentation here. Good evening, Mayor Janung and members of council, senior management. I'm Troy Sylvester. I'm here as manager of the Water Wastewater Department to provide an overview of the water wastewater section and highlight some of our responsibilities and capital projects for 2020. The water wastewater section is often referred to as W3, so if you hear me saying that, that's what I am referring to. The water wastewater team 2020 roster is made up of 11 full-time people, 2 permanent part-time, and 1 seasonal student. To break that down further, there is 1 coordinator, 5 operators, 4 maintenance personnel, and 1 system technologist, permanent part-time, and 1 meter installer that is also permanent part-time, and of course our student operator, and myself, the manager. Can you skip to the next? Sorry. Oh, 1 back. That's okay. Okay. Yeah. The W3 section provides maintenance, capital planning, and upgrades for the water and wastewater infrastructure. The W3 team is also responsible for metering, data analysis, and water conservation. The maintenance of the 500 hydrants, which was brought into in-house in 2020, consists of all the hydrants being inspected twice annually. In the spring, hydrants are pressure tested, lubricated, flushed, and inspected for any damages. The volume of water, the static pressure, dynamic pressures, and a photograph are all then recorded and uploaded onto the GIS for everyone's perusal. In the fall, hydrants are again inspected, pressure tested, lubricated, checked to ensure the hydrant is drained so freezing does not occur. We have 20 kilometers of force main that transfers our wastewater to the city of Calgary. 18 kilometers of that force main is located outside the borders of Cochrane. The force main is inspected on a monthly basis, and along with that there is 9 air relief valve vaults and 1 odor control system. The reason we travel it that often is there's a lot of activities that occur within and around the easements, and we just want to stay on top of anything that might be occurring before we have a incident with our very critical piece of infrastructure. Next slide. Thank you. So we have 16 W3 facilities. They all have PLCs, and all those PLCs report back to a supervisory control and data acquisition program, also known as a SCADA, which is located at the water treatment plant. This allows remote operations, alarming, and trending of each facility's critical operating equipment, such as levels, pressures, flows, temperatures, pump operation, and electrical status, to name a few. All facilities are equipped with standby generators so that service is not interrupted during power outages. The generators are exercised weekly with load transfers occurring monthly, and a third-party contractor is used to do load testing on an annual basis and to maintain the generators, such as oil changes and fluid changes, battery replacements. The water treatment plant and the transfer station are attended to 7 days a week. All other facilities are attended twice weekly so that we can confirm operating status and also what the building condition, that the building condition is good. Sometimes there is outside forces that create some damages there. Next slide. So some of the additional responsibilities that aren't as obvious, I wanted to highlight a couple of them. And the town is a member of the Alberta One Call Association, and W3 manages all of the infrastructure locates for the town of Cochrane. We identify what areas they are in, what is there. We create reports to send back to the submitter, and we provide markings to delineate where the infrastructure is. The infrastructure that we would locate would be services for residential and non-residential, as well as storm, water, and sanitary mains. To date, we have done 2018 locates, which is coming up fairly closely to our high back in, I think it was 2018. So it's been a very busy year. As part of the town's license to operate the water treatment plant and distribution system, we are required to do sampling in our distribution system. To date, we've done 704 distribution samples and analyzed those in-house. And in addition, we have done 354 bacteriological samples, which we have sent to the Calgary Health Lab for analysis. There is 103 centrifugal pumps that are in our operating system. Those are all maintained by W3 staff, and some of the rebuilds and repairs are done in-house. Some things are outside of our capacities, are sent away for that. 48 of those 103 pumps are in a vibration analysis program. These were identified as being critical to the operations. The vibration analysis program is done on a monthly basis. Staff will go out and attach a monitor to each one of those pumps. It'll gather data from the pump and pump motor. That information is sent to a third party for analysis. They provide us with the direction on what the bearing life expectancy is. Is it starting to fail? Is it running fine? They provide direction in relation to any type of maintenance that might be done to assist in extending the life of those bearings. These types of things help us to do a little predicting in the future of when some of the equipment's going to be replaced for capital projects. Our next slide. Our water conservation program is working with communications to deliver Blue Corner videos. Ads were shared via social media and the local theater. private irrigation systems were identified and contacted to encourage system checks and optimization. This included adjustments to frequency and durations. We introduced the context of depth of water use. People have, when we say 5 cubic meters, it's hard to imagine, so we provide them with the area of their particular yard, and then we show them with the water that they use just how many centimeters of water was applied to that particular area. We've had an excellent response to our rebate program this year. It's actually going to be a banner year in relation to that. This is going to be the highest applications that we've had to date. We've had 415, and in 2019 we had 420, so we still have a few months to go there. We did 120 non-residential meter accounts were audited. Meter multipliers were checked. Bypass line status was observed and checked. Backflow installation were checked to see if it was in compliance, and also if the inspection had been recent. So they have to be done on a yearly basis. We metering. We've done 107 radio read transmitters have been replaced this year. Those radio transmitters were part of a warranty recall. Batteries were failing. We also installed 280 new meters to date. In comparison, that was 325 in 2019, so we're looking to be roughly in that same particular area. Capital projects, we were involved in the Railway Street project, which included the removal of approximately 480 meters of water main and sanitary main. Those mains were realigned, and the water main size was upgraded from 150 millimeters to 300 millimeters. There was the addition in Glen Eagle's siphon. We made an addition of a sanitary maintenance manhole this year. That also included the manhole beside itself was bypass pumping, some additional piping, and 3 valves as well. We've been working with other sections, and the design of the Highway 1A22 utility water and sanitary pipe relocation, the twinning of the force main that runs to the city of Calgary, as well as the River Heights Reservoir expansion. Next slide. So we also do some data analysis, and some examples would be, the comparison of metered billing used to booster station flows, so that we can assist in identifying areas of interest for leak detection. We do customer water use analysis that relates back to land use, seasonal patterns, and older neighborhoods. We have done a lot of per capita tracking water use, max day demands, and cost comparisons. This all assists us in shaping budget development, system design, and projecting water capacities. Not unsimilar to some recent years, we are tracking to about 760 liters per capita per day, with a max day of 412 liters per capita per day. So those are very similar numbers to 2017 2018, 2019 as an anomaly was slightly lower. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, and I am open to any questions if you have any.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation. And Mr. Sylvester, I've been saying this to every manager that comes forward, but I want to share tonight again. Please pass on to your team and to you yourself in person. I want to say thank you for all of the work that you and your team have done throughout COVID. And many of our teams have not had to go home and work from home, but your team was one of those that obviously can't leave the water treatment plant, as you've highlighted tonight, and other of those critical systems that we rely on every day as a resident of Cochrane. So thank you for that work. And also, I would imagine that the amount of people staying home actually put more pressures on our system. So I received 0 complaints. Everybody has been happily flushing their toilets and watering their lawns as they should, without, well, I mean, with water conservation in mind, obviously, but without worrying about the service failing. So thank you to you and your team.
Thank you.
Councillor Flowers?
Okay. Yes, thank you for all your hard work in looking after our water in Cochrane. It's awesome. I was curious about the water conservation program that you have. How does the rebate program work? I'm impressed with the high number of people accessing it.
The rebate program consists of rebates for lawn buyback, removing grass, putting in wood mulch. It includes new washers, low-flow washers, low-flow toilets are just a few examples of some of the rebates that are available. The residents apply for the rebate, it's reviewed, and then the cost is applied to their water bill, and so it is then taken off their water bill as things progress along. So the highest being $100 for a lawn buyback, and you would have to spend upwards of a couple $100 to be able to receive that.
Great, thank you. Good program.
Thank you.
Councillor McFadden or Councillor Fedeko, do you have any questions?
No, none for me at this time, but yes, thanks again to the whole department for keeping things flowing and running in the way that they should be for our council.
Yeah, I have no questions other than to say thank you. It's always great news that when we flush, we never hear another word about it. So thank you.
Okay. I see no other questions here. Could I just get a motion to accept as information, and we'll let Troy go home? Councillor Wilson.
I'll move to accept the presentation as information.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you for your presentation tonight. Next up, we have 6C, Communications Update. Ms. Drucker will be joining us again shortly.
You don't see me for months and months. Here I am twice in one night.
I feel like I've seen you a lot. Communications has been, you know,
It's true.
busy. Yes, that's
Some days more than others. All right, good evening again. I'm here this evening to give you an overview of your town communications team and the work they do. I know the team is watching from home, so it's a little shout out to Jason and Julie and Deb for all the great work they do. I am here speaking for all of us. Communications activity can be divided into two main categories. Strategic, where we do research and analysis, have in-depth discussions, and develop strategies to meet current and future needs. After we have a strategy with goals, key messages, and audiences identified, we identify the tactics we should use to meet those goals. And tactics are what the public sees. 2020 is an unusual year, so some of the increased demands on communications are related to COVID. But some are the result of new technology and tools, increased expertise, and additional training and certifications in the communications team, and what happens when you serve a growing community and a growing organization. Looking ahead, we anticipate continued demand for all communication services and requests to increase support for some town activities or the development of new guidelines for some activities we're already doing. And now some more details. Strategy in general is about having a broad lens on the town's work and the community. It's about assessing and mitigating risks, as well as making sure all the background work is in place to provide guidance for all communications outputs. Much of what communications does is guided by approved policies and other documents, so the roles and expectations are clear, as well as any provincial regulations we're required to follow. The communications team enhanced our own expertise with professional development and training in public engagement, so we can meet new requirements of the MGA and provide a high level of service to town departments and the community in general. There are a couple of different ways the communications team addresses town reputational issues. Based on past experience, we develop answers to common questions so we can provide consistent responses. We work with other departments and sections, including senior leadership and council, to make sure everyone has the same information. Basically, our goal is to tell the town's story and not let others tell it for us. Consistency helps the town maintain credibility, authority, and trustworthiness. Communications acts proactively by keeping an eye on the broader story. We watch local media and social media, as well as regional and provincial developments that may impact the town. We flag potential issues for senior management and provide advice on action or further monitoring. And we react by developing strategies to respond to issues and work to continue telling the town's story. When we work with an internal department or section, it's usually on something very specific. We work with the project lead to confirm goals, identify audiences, and develop messages. Much of what you see in public is the output related to a communications or marketing strategy. When the provincial government added specific details for public engagement to the MGA, the communications team added it to our suite of activity in a formal way. We drafted the policy and received approval from Council in 2018. We developed a toolkit for internal use and held staff training sessions, along with an online engagement platform, event support, and reporting templates. If a piece of printed material is identified as a tactic for a communications strategy, communications does the writing, design, and production. There are also a number of regular publications we produce and daily information sharing through online channels. The communications team is increasing our ability to provide in-house video services. The town website and social media accounts are considered publications, but there's also work required to oversee their use and ensure they're used appropriately. We also work to ensure town messages across media are consistent. Some of communications work is internal, even though you may see the results of that work in public. We provide templates, training, and support so other departments and sections have the tools they need to share their own information. And the communications team is always available for advice, fresh eyes, and support. Speaking of communications staff, I mentioned them at the start. All communications advisors can perform all tasks, but we've also specialized in some areas like video and public engagement, as I mentioned. As we acquire expertise in a new area or with a new tool, there is always an increase in demand for that service. Communications work is divided into portfolios, which means a communications advisor is assigned to each department or section, and so they can provide a high level of service. Here are just a few examples. of what the communications team has worked on recently, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Wow, that was quick. All of the
Hey.
montage there. Yeah. Okay, thank you for your presentation. Council, any questions about communications?
Could I make a comment?
Councillor Fedeko, of course. Go ahead.
I just wanted to personally thank the communications department, and probably especially on a day like today. You guys have done an incredible amount of work in being able to get messaging out, and obviously keeping council informed about what is going on and what is happening. I just hope that this isn't actually even towards the communications department, but more towards the community at large, that things are ever changing in our unsettling world, I guess. And I would just ask that the community be a little bit kind, and obviously that council also be kind in some of the messaging that goes out. Things are changing. We hope that we're always doing the right thing and saying the right thing at the right time, but obviously sometimes mistakes happen. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work that you guys do. It means a lot to me as a councillor, and especially one that ran on communication, that we support you and that we support the job that you guys have done. So thank you so much for everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, you beat me to it, Councillor Fedeko. I had this big soliloquy of thank yous to praise our communication department on too. So building on that, I too would like to share my thanks. This council in particular has been, as Councillor Fedeko has pointed out, put in a lot of emphasis on communication outwards. Me in particular, I know I put extreme pressure on you and your department, and I just want to say thank you for that. Also, throughout COVID, I joked about it at the beginning of your presentation about I see you a lot, but that is because there's a need. And we are, I mean, as we've tried to navigate and continue to navigate through changing times, how we're doing it continues to change, and I just want to say thank you to your entire team, Julie, Jason, Deb, yourself. It's been fun to work with you and under extreme pressures at times, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Flowers, you have a question?
Also a thank you for all the hard work during the increased demand this year. I really appreciate the weekly updates that you send us, because often I miss things and then I can go check up on it and see what's going on. Also, the videos that you've done have been very professional, and just overall a really good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got one question. Councillor McFadden, are you good?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to pass on my congratulations as well. In the presentation, it really became obvious how diverse our communications offerings and challenges really are, and so congratulations to the team that have really evolved and changed and deliver on that in an extraordinary way. So congratulations, and yeah, I as well appreciate the Friday update, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. One question, I would just, and maybe it's one that I would leave with you. You wouldn't necessarily have to answer tonight. If you don't have the answer, that's fine. But how do we continue to adapt? As things change, social media obviously has ramped things up. But we have a policy or a bylaw in front of us tonight. I guess that is one answer to that question. I was happy to see that. But how in your department do you continue to foresee or predict, and how do we adapt? It's not always through staffing in these times, and I'll just say ...
It's a good question, and I think the team has shown some pretty good adaptation as we've moved through COVID for sure, but in the time that I've been with the town, we've adapted and changed regularly. One of the things, I can mention a couple of things, and as far as predicting the future, nobody can predict the future. We'll just have to continue doing what we're doing and keep an eye on technology and best practices. We do have connection with other municipal communicators across Alberta. We regularly share ideas and ask questions of each other, and that really helps. The other couple things that we do internally are we have schedules where we check things like our social media hourly or daily, or depending on what's going on, so that we don't miss things. We don't wait for someone to say, hey, have you read Facebook today? Because we need to be on top of that. So we have a schedule within the communications team, and we take turns so that we are on that stuff on a regular basis, and a timely basis. Another thing that we do, I mentioned staff training. So we give support and training to the entire rest of the organization, so that they have templates and processes that they can follow to do some of their own communication work. So our website and some of the social media updating is handled by the department responsible for that content. So the communications team is not updating or proofreading every single web page and every single social media post that goes out. That doesn't make sense to us because FCSS knows their content. So they update their information and they answer the questions that come in through the Programs and Activities Facebook page, for instance. So distributing that work has really helped with the support of the communications team. And I think in the future, as new tools come online or new methods or processes, we would look to support the rest of the organization for that activity too. As I said, we have lots of experts in our organization. We want to empower them to answer the questions that come directly to them. We would never answer their emails, so we don't need to update their web information or answer social media questions. And then we keep an eye on the communication and marketing landscape in general to see maybe what's coming and where we can learn and where we can add expertise.
Okay, you jogged something in me, and it was, yeah, darn. Throughout COVID,
Yes.
we've had our own resources to react and respond and put up communication, whether it be a sign or a post, like a social media post. I've talked to some communities where they've taken a regional approach to that. Have you had any discussions with your colleagues in the Calgary region? Is this something that perhaps we could talk about with the CMRB, where there would be a time and place for it, but COVID's actually a perfect example of the messaging being consistent from Calgary to Cochrane to Chestermere to Airdrie and everywhere in between, so that a resident who may live here and work in another community experiences the same kind of communication. I mean, as we have different bylaws for different things, that becomes muddy, but when we're trying to get across the provincial message, likely it would be the same, not to replace, but just to enhance what we're doing.
I would say the short answer is yes, there are always opportunities to do that. In a situation like COVID, communications teams work with their ECCs, and so that info, I'm looking at, so because that information often comes from the province and gets distributed through ECCs because of the emergency nature of COVID, and communications teams across the province were hooked into their ECCs. And as I was mentioning, the regional communicators group, we do share information and ask questions of each other. We will share draft bylaws. We will share language. It's a quasi-formal association. CMRB, we would welcome that opportunity to participate in a little more formal way in CMRB. So if there's an opportunity to do that, I'd love to talk about it.
I think it's future. I'm just planting seeds.
It makes sense because we're all dealing, especially regionally, with the same issues.
Right.
And so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we would love to find more ways to do that. We do it in a less formal way at the moment.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McFadden or Federico?
No, I'm good.
Nothing from me.
Okay. Did we get a motion? Don't recall a motion. Councillor Nagel's reaching for his microphone.
I move to accept the presentation.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It carries. Thank you for your presentation, and thanks again to your team.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
Assessment and taxation.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
It's kind of what fuels everything else, though, isn't it?
Yes. Good afternoon, Mayor Janung, council members. Today I'm here to present to you the assessment and taxation update. So this is our structure. So myself as the manager of assessment and tax. We have Ryan Lodemeyer as our one assessor and Ryan Brooks as the second assessor, Tanya Popplewell as the assessment administrator. And then on our tax side, we have Michelle King, who's our tax administrator, and Tamika Mueller, who's our general clerk in taxes. And I just wanted to, acknowledge my team and say what a great job they've done with COVID and stuff. It's been, like everybody else, it's been a bit of a struggle, but they always provide excellent customer service and they do a great job. So kudos to everybody. So this is just kind of a assessment cycle map of kind of what we do. So our year begins in January with the assessment notices are mailed. January to April, we then have a 67-day inquiry period. Complaints are filed after that and hearings are scheduled. We start in that process our annual inspections. We go on once the annual inspections are kind of going on at the same time when we'll have the appeal hearings. The next step would be our starting our valuation, like verifying our sales. Our RFIs are requests for information that are mailed out to the residents and also to our commercial properties as well. We finalize inspections and the information we've received. Then we start modeling the residential properties through a statistical model that we do each year, and we analyze the non-residential market. Finalize the assessment values, and then we have a process where we load our assessment data to a program called Asset, which is the provincial government. The data goes to Asset where we meet quality standards and they audit our assessments, and then once that's done, we declare the assessment roll for the year. In the meantime, kind of throughout the year, we do growth numbers. July to October, we estimate growth and kind of update each month as we're going along. And supplementary assessments, we drive those monthly. They come with a 67-day appeal period, and they're mailed out in October, and appeal period's over in December, and they're due at the end of December. So kind of same sort of thing, what we do. The assessments are done yearly with the July 1st as a valuation date. That's a legislative date. We re-inspect 20% of the properties per year, so that's approximately 3,000. These are completed by mailing out requests for information, phone calls, and physical inspections. Then we analyze and review all the sales. There's approximately 1,100 per year. Through sales verification forms that we mail out where property owners have the opportunity to give us any information about their sales. MLS, so that's the CREB, the Calgary Real Estate Board, the multiple listing service. We have access to that where we review all the sales that have come through the multiple listings. All sales through land titles, so we get all the land titles are reviewed. We check for related parties and that to make sure all the sales are good, and we verify those. Inspections, phone calls, and then the permits, any of the permits that come through building are reviewed, accessory permits, new housing, anything like that. And then supplementary assessments, like I said before, that's a new construction, and we drive those monthly to see the progression of the new construction, and then mail October with that 67-day review period as well. Analyze and prepare the growth numbers for budgeting, and then prepare and defend assessment appeals at the Assessment Review Board. And compliance with changing legislations, which this past year there's been quite a few changes in the legislation that we've had to adapt to. Review and analyze sales, transactions, leases, vacancy, operating expenses, net income, and capitalization rates. So we review all our non-residential properties and request the information from the owners, and we get probably about a 65 to 70% return on that. So we do have quite a bit of information that comes back to us. And then bylaws relating to assessment, incentives, new legislation, and then our yearly provincial audit. So just to kind of give you an idea, the best practice standards for parcels per assessor. So we have an international organization and Alberta assessors. So they're saying 25 to 3,500 parcels per assessor. Currently, with the staff we have, so myself included in the total with the two assessors, we have 14,988 parcels. So we're at 4,996 parcels per assessor. So it's a pretty heavy workload for what we're working with, but we get it done and everybody does a good job. And then this is the taxation cycle. So January starts with the first penalty, then the recalculation of the monthly payment, tip payments, and then they prepare and mail assessment notices, and 67 days they're doing revisions and inquiries as well for helping with the assessment department. Then we go into the tax recovery. So anybody that's 2 years in arrears or more, the calls start for tax recovery. We start the list, getting ready the list to put tax notifications on the property. Education, school requisitions come in. We start the preliminary review to see where those numbers are at. And then tax recovery list is due March 31st, so that's prepared and sent off to register those on the properties. Tax rate bylaw review, so start looking at the tax rates and working with finance for that. Tax notices mailed, so inquiries and the payments coming in then, so it's pretty busy 30 days when those are mailed. Taxes due June 30th. This year was extended till September, and then we have a penalty in July, typically. And supplementary tax bills mailed and October penalty. And then year-end supplementary taxes due. And then in the meantime, they're doing the monthly, every month, taking people on and off the tip payments. They're mailing out school support notices, which people declare their school support, so maintaining that. Sales verifications, subdivisions and NSFs. They do tax certificates, download all the land titles every month, send out tax statements if people are behind in their taxes, update the website, inquiries, collections, and regular property maintenance. So they're pretty busy as well. So like I said, tax installment program, we have about 6,827 accounts. School support and sales verification forms, 3,100 a year. NSF charges and collections, about 360 a year. Tax certificates, 3,600. Land titles, 3,100 a year. Tax notifications, there's about 70 that we start out with each year. Tax statements for outstanding taxes, about 900 notices are sent out for that, followed up with calls for that. Prepare assessment notices, approximately 15,000 of those. Tax notices, 15,000. Assessment, supplementary assessment notices, 450 has been typical. Now we're down a little bit. Like this year, it's probably going to be around 290. And typical penalties, 3 January, July, and October, so about 1,000 of those a year. And then grant in lieu properties, 25 properties a year. So taxes, there's, in 2015, there was just over 12,000 properties. Now there's almost 15,000, so it's an increase of about 17% in those 5 years. So process improvements. So we've launched the online map for property assessment searches. So that started last year, and people have been using that. There's also online ability to check assessments on our website. Updated and maintain our fillable online request forms, so working towards making that easier and accessible. And then legislation just passed through the red tape reduction will now permit a bylaw to be passed to allow for e-billing for assessments and tax notices, which will significantly reduce the postage and mailing costs. So before the end of the year, I'll bring the bylaw forward that will allow us to do that, and will certainly help out with the postage and charges for that. And outsourced notices for printing, postage, and mailing, and staff resources and hours that were allocated to these tasks are now shifted to maintain customer service requirements and continue efficiencies. And then COVID. So we were tracking the calls and emails. So data for the weeks, March 17th to the 25th, so 27 weeks, 1,100 phone calls and over 4,000 emails. So transitioned fairly quickly to processes to do things digitally, which was interesting at first, but now it's transitioned quite well, and it's working really well, and pretty much a seamless transition from office to working from home, with lots of positive feedback from residents. So that was good, and that's it. Any questions?
When do you get any sleep?
Yeah, it is a lot, but it's not all at once, right? But it is a lot of data, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And again, I just want to say thank you. Not everybody understands the amount of work that goes in behind the scenes in every department. I'm just so thankful for all of these updates from each department that is highlighting, number of wastewater kilometers that we maintain, or hydrants that we flush twice a year.
Right.
I think people really realize how much work goes on. 4,000 emails generated through COVID, that's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time to get back to people on questions and concerns and fears about their taxes and payments. So thank you to your team. I appreciate everything you're doing for the town. I see a couple of questions. Councillor Flowers, your light's on.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative.
Thanks.
You do have a busy year all the way through. Just a couple questions. How many people did take advantage of the later due date for the taxes this year? Do you know?
Not offhand. We did run penalties, and there wasn't a significant difference in the amount of, like, the dollar amount kind of thing. So I'd roughly say they're offhand with 350, maybe more than the previous year. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the other one was, how does it work with the hearings? I'm assuming that's when there's a complaint, they're not happy with the taxation. How does that process work?
Yeah, so what happens, we get the hearing date set, and then there's an exchange of information. So basically, there's really legislated deadlines on exchange of information. So with the residential ones, it's not as laborious as say the commercial ones, because those ones are the ones where you're dealing with the millions of dollars. But still, there's an exchange of information where the complainant puts a package together, they present it to us, then we have a package that we send back to them, and then they rebut the package as well. So then when we get to the hearing, once the hearing's set, the exchange of information is done, and we sit in a quasi-judicial setting where they're presenting their information, we're presenting ours, we question each other, just like kind of like a little mini trial kind of thing, and then the decision is made by the board that's presenting. So it's in residential ones, a lot of people will, do a smaller package and present, but when we're talking about those commercial ones, we usually get agents and possibly lawyers that come to represent their clients. So potentially some of the packages we get in are 500 pages that we'll have to go through, and then we'll have to put our evidence together to, substantiate the assessment as we see it, and they rebut that. And it's quite a process when you get in the court setting. Like, a typical one would be a half a day. If it's like a grocery store or something, is usually a day hearing to have one of those. So it takes us probably on like a grocery store, a bigger commercial hearing, it probably takes us 2 to 3 weeks to prepare a package for that. So depending on the appeals, it can be quite a lot of work, so.
Do you go to Calgary for that?
No, we have them actually right here, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Thank you, Gail, you and the team. I had 2 questions. One was along the same line about the hearings scheduled and complaints filed for assessments. Maybe I missed it in the slides there. How many per year do you deal with for residential or bigger, and then bigger business?
Residential, the last couple of years, we've probably had maybe 3, 5, depending on the year. And commercial ones, I think last year we had about 11, and I think this year we had 6. And some of those, when we do get the information, we will still exchange or sit down and have a meeting if there's something that can be fixed, or we can come to a resolution, or they present information that we can make a change. We will do that. If something's wrong, we can make a change, and then, we don't have to go to hearing still at that point. But there's quite a lot that goes into it to get to that point, but those packages are pretty big when they come from the agents, for sure.
So a lot of them don't even make it to hearing. Did I understand that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sometimes if they present information maybe that we didn't have, or we relook at the information, or possibly like an instance where maybe they've had a different size or something, and we can look at it and say, oh, okay, maybe we had a slight size difference or something like that, then we could come to a resolution maybe rather than continuing with the hearing. But most of the time at those ones, we exchange the packages most of the time, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And you mentioned the Red Tape Reduction Act. I know we met, it was a while ago now, maybe 2 years ago, about the possibility of doing some of our billing through emails. And
yeah.
I'm happy to hear. Does that mean that the new land title holders are now supplying email addresses so that we can contact them that way?
So we'll have to go, I'll have to bring the bylaw, and we still have to look at our financial system to make sure that everything's in place, because especially with assessment notices, they have to acknowledge the delivery of them. So we have to make sure that, the ability is that they can go on and confirm that, yes, they want it by e-billing, so we have a record that you agreed to get it by e-billing, and not that we didn't mail it and you didn't get it, but that you actually acknowledge that you can get it that way. So we're just kind of in the process of looking through the system, and the ability there is to do it and everything, just getting it set up. So I think our plan is to kind of bring the bylaw, get that set up, and then hopefully put in an insert in our assessment notices where people can start signing up, and hopefully then by the time the tax notices and that start going out, we should be able to have the ability to send them by email.
It seems like the future, yeah. That's good.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Councillor Fedeko or McFadden, do you have anything to ask or add?
Could I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Fedeko.
I'm just curious if we've done any comparison to other municipalities or like-sized towns who, how their COVID, I guess, questions or concerns have come up. I mean, are we about in similar numbers, or is our community perhaps doing a little bit better when it comes to people having questions to do with their taxes or assessments?
Did you catch that? How do we compare to other communities in number of people accessing the financial relief? That's how I heard it. Is that correct, Councillor
Thank
Fedeko?
you. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers from other municipalities. From what I understand, that I think just because it's like it kind of just wrapped up here or whatever, could probably get more concrete idea of what other people are seeing. But for us, like I said, we did have a bit of an increase of people that didn't pay, but for people calling, really expressing the need for relief, we really haven't had any really significant, like I can't pay and that kind of thing, you know, people still seem to be managing okay. So that may change in the, you know, in the coming months, or possibly like next June when we start levying taxes again, it might be a different story. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Okay, does that
Thanks
answer
for
your?
thanks for the info. I mean, I'd just be curious to see kind of how these shake out. And, you know, I mean, we're fortunate, obviously, maybe if that's the case, we don't have as many concerns or complaints or anything or questions. I mean, that would be a good thing for Cochrane, but it's more of a curiosity question than anything.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McFadden?
No, I'm good. I just continue to be impressed by how this department has grown, because it wasn't that many years ago that we actually outsourced this. So it's clearly vital that we brought that in-house and delivering good service to our residents.
Okay, good point. Thank you. Gail, I got one question, and that's just about how assessment is done. And you don't have to get into all the details. And I guess why I'm asking is I've had some feedback from some that say the town can just change our assessed value whenever they want to get the money that we need to pay the bills that we have.
Right.
Is that correct?
No, it's a very legislated process. So I think sometimes it's hard for people to understand, like July 1st is our valuation date.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we mail out the notices sometimes, and especially in a time like now with COVID and everything, where we're just starting our preliminary analysis. So for residential, I don't think we're going to see a huge decrease, but who knows, by January when we send them out, it might be a different story. So I think the main thing to keep in mind is that is the valuation date that we're legislated by. So July 1st is the market that we're looking at, and everything is done by that. So it's July 1st market, what's going on, and then December 31st, what conditions. So if you had like a basement done by the end of December, that's going to be reflected in your assessment in that January value. So we do, you know, we welcome people to call then, and we do a lot of comparable property sheets. Like if people call in, we'll send out a spreadsheet that demonstrates the properties that have sold and how we came up with the assessments. So yeah, for sure, if people have questions in that, but definitely, like, it's legislated, it's audited before we even send out the assessment. So it's a pretty stringent process to get to the final value.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Perfect.
So it's not just a slide rule that we can adjust in your office. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? I keep looking over here. No one's sitting over there. From council, I mean. Any other questions? No? Okay. Again, did someone put the motion on them? No. Here it comes. Councillor Flowers.
That council accepts the 2020 assessment and taxation presentation as information.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Flowers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, aye. Okay. That passes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to finance. Quarter 2 2020 financial report. Ms. Gallen.
Uh-oh. All right.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Tanya Galan. I am the Financial Services Manager for the Town of Cochrane. Felt I would do a brief introduction, as last week, as you know, we were here presenting the 2019 results, and thank you to Catherine, who stepped in my time of need and shared the Q4 presentation. I'm just going to pull up the So, being that we were here last council meeting presenting to you the 2019 results, we're moving forward and looking now at the financial results as of June 30th, so from the time period January to June. I wanted to take a bit of a journey with you to bring you what these results are reflecting. So, of course, this budget was approved in December, and then 2020 started happening. So, the approved budget included the previous organizational structure, so your reports in front of you reflect that. Of course, as well, mid-March, my apologies, COVID hit, so some of the financial impacts of that are also included in these results. I do enjoy a good visual, so up in front of you is a pictorial representation of where we were at as of June 30th. The blue bars represent the budgeted net cost for each section, and then the green bar indicates the actual net cost and where everyone wound up at the end of June. Of course, in a perfect world, we would spend our budgeted costs by section evenly over the year, but of course that's not how things actually pan out. So what I mean by that is, of course, as invoices roll in, sometimes they're not reflected right now, but they will be in the Q3, Q4 reports. Also, we have some sections that bill annually. A great example of that is our business licensing. They bill at the end of the year. So, of course, we will see their revenues reflected in the Q4 results. Overall, as an organization, we landed exactly on the 50% mark. So we had budgeted in 2020 for $28.6 million in net costs, and we wound up exactly at 50% of that at June. So, of course, in the middle of Q2, COVID hit and the impacts started to be realized. We've asked, of course, a lot of work was done with administration to ask managers to reduce their costs to help out to really offset any increased expenditures related to COVID. Now we're flipping to the other side, the capital side of our budget. 2020, we had budgeted to spend $43 million in capital projects. As of June 30th, we landed at $3.8 million spent. When reviewing our budgets, we came back and stated that we wanted to add 4 new capital projects for $4.7 million and wound up deferring, of course, looking at the capital projects, which ones have we not started or could we look at deferring, and we decided to defer 8 capital projects for $4.1 million. And as of June 30th, we had completed 3 capital projects. Those were all in the facilities area, including the parking lot addition at the operations, protective services ready room, and the ranch house parking lot addition. Sticking with my theme, here is a pictorial representation of where we are at as of June 30th with capital. It's split out a little bit differently in the types of projects. The dark blue bar represents the budget. Of course, this reflects all the budgeted dollars for capital projects up to 2020. The green bar in the middle represents the expenses as of June 30th, and the light blue bar to the right is what budget remains for these capital projects. We had 45 projects in total that continued in 2020. And as you can see, the biggest dollar area for capital projects was in the parks and roads area. That concludes my presentation for the Q2 operational and capital results. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions about Q2? I see none. I hear none. Councillor McFadden or Fadeco?
None from me at this time. No, thank you.
Okay, looks like you answered it all in the report. I would look for a motion. Councillor Nagel?
With the recommended action, sorry we don't have any questions for you. We've talked about finances a number of times the last couple of meetings, so I think everyone's gotten it all out of their system. But thank you very much for all your hard work on this, and looking forward to moving into budget.
Okay, don't hear or see any other questions. Thank you for your report. All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, notices of motion. Don't hear any, don't see any. We'll move on. Mayor's report. I have a quick one. Just wanted to say happy Thanksgiving, belated to everybody. Hope everyone had some time with their cohorts and families. Looking forward to the bridge opening on Thursday. Long-awaited, long-anticipated, massive infrastructure project in our community. Looking forward to having the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Minister of Transportation join us for the event to give and share some words. On that, I had I just want to flash this fancy mask here. Visited Spray Lake Sawmills on, I forget what day it was last week. The Minister of Forestry was in town, Minister Dreeshen, and it was, we did a tour of the Spray Lake Sawmills facility and just talked about the synergies of having the sawmill and the industry in our community and an important part of our economy. So that was very good to have him in town for that. And that was about it for my report. Obviously lots going on, but keep it short and sweet tonight. Anyone else have a report they'd like to share? Going, okay. That is it. We have an in-camera session. We need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Flowers, okay. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
We lost her. Okay, it still carries. We are in camera. Thank you. And that will be it for the meeting for any decision making anyways. So we'll say good night.